It's Michelle. Hi. So I just wanted to pop on today to talk a little bit about an upcoming workshop that I'm offering called Power Speak. And the reason that I'm offering this workshop is because the subject is very, very dear to my heart. Um, as a young person, it was really hard for me to speak my truth. Um, in various settings in my life, I got the message that either my truth was not valid or my truth was countering somebody else's truth, and therefore their truth was more important. Sometimes it was based on how I shared my truth, especially if I was really emotional about what I was talking about. And we've all had our own kind of individual experiences with sharing, what's really going on for us in various situations. I know for me, one of my challenges was emotional regulation. I didn't know how to be in an emotional state and speak my truth at the same time. It was almost like one, kind of overran the other. And if I was really emotional, then my emotions spoke louder than my message. And if I wanted to deliver my message, sometimes I ended up having to write it because it seemed like it was easier for me to just put down my message on paper rather than having to deliver it in person. But that didn't always work for me. So as a therapist for the last 15 years, hi, Tina, how are you? One of the things that I work on with clients the most really is communication. It's how do you get your message across in a way that the other person can hear? And I see this on multiple levels. So the first level that I see it on is with family, that it's really, really challenging sometimes because of the dynamics and patterns that are kind of grooved into the family structure, to be able to change the way that you're communicating with family and to be able to tell them, like, I'm trying to do this differently. And I really need your help and support as I figure out how to express what's really going on for me. The other place that I see it is in the workplace, that some people are really great at communicating with their families, but once it comes to being in a position of authority, taking a management role, having to delegate and things like that, that can get really uncomfortable. And they don't necessarily know how to stand in their power when maybe that's new or it's uncomfortable, and they're not used to taking kind of a power position. I also see this with very powerful women who are fantastic in business, can negotiate like a boss, really, really strong women who come home and then they continue to kind of carry that energy into their home, and they struggle to communicate with their partner from a place of kind of their heart space. And they continue to delegate or, kind of take on that like boss persona with their partner or their kids. And then they wonder why their partner or their kids are becoming kind of reactive to the way that they are talking to them. So I see this all over the board. And it's been a personal journey of mine to really figure out how to be a powerful and strong woman who has a lot to say, who has strong opinions, who, is educated. How do I deliver the things that I know or the information that I have or what I'm feeling in a way that the other person can actually receive on a deep level? My greatest teacher in this regard has actually been my husband. We got together 7 years ago, almost 8 years ago, and I had a lot of healing to do after a relationship of 20 years that was really destructive, where the communication was not healthy or helpful, and having to kind of renegotiate how I talk to people that I love. I remember one particular argument, I was really hot about something, really frustrated and angry, and my voice was rising, and I was getting to the point where I was yelling and I was cussing and I was really intense, and he just shut down. And I remember saying, oh, well, you just can't handle my feelings, can you? Like, no man's ever been able to handle my feelings. I guess, blah, 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 and kind of went off on my thing. And he looked at me and he said, it's not your feelings that I can't handle. It's you yelling at me that I can't handle. And it really took me back, because in my family, we were kind of yellers. Like, we didn't have a problem yelling. And that was kind of how we expressed ourselves. And for him to say that really shut him down, it was kind of like, well, I actually don't know how to express how strongly I'm feeling without yelling. Like, I really had to stop and think about that. And so a couple of tricks that I learned. One was that when I was really upset, I had to actually get very physically close to him and put my hands on his knees. And what that did for me is it naturally regulated my energy, because the last thing I want to do is like be yelling in somebody's face. It's easy to do from across the room, to be yelling and throwing my arms around and, all of that. When I was right there with him, that felt really uncomfortable. So it was a way that I could kind of regulate myself when I was really upset. The other thing that I've done, or I've learned to do, is actually to put my hand on my heart when I talk to him. And the reason for that is to remind myself that I'm trying to help him understand how I feel. And that by going up into story, it's really easy to go into judgment. And it's really easy for me to go into the past. And it's really easy for me to be kind of like stuck in my story. And when I come down into my heart, it actually helps me to slow down and take a moment and really have to be in my feeling, like really noticing what's happening in the moment. And the feedback that he's given me is that he can really feel the difference. That when I'm in my heart, he's feeling me on a heart level. He's feeling my pain. And his natural instinct as a man is to want to do something about that, right? And when he recognizes that he's the source of that pain, he really wants to do something differently. Versus me being up here and you never do this and you should do this, and coming from a place of kind of blame and judgment, nobody can really tolerate that. Like, if somebody comes at me with blame and judgment, well, I'm going to be like this, right? I'm going to be super defensive and not want to hear what they have to say. So over the years, I've learned various ways of communicating. Dialectical behavioral therapy is a skill set that I teach people who've experienced trauma and struggle with emotional regulation. And there's multiple pieces to that kind of communication style. One is really taking a look at, what is my intention here? Like, what is it that I actually want to communicate with the person? What's going on? And kind of being a broken record if that person is derailing me. So with difficult people, sometimes they will want to attack, or they'll want to pull you off topic. And so some of the skills are learning how to kind of be a broken record in a respectful and neutral way, so that you can keep rerouting the conversation back to your initial goal. What is it that you were trying to say? Okay, yes, that was yesterday. And what I'm trying to talk about is what happened today, just 5 minutes ago. I understand that. And what I really would like to talk about is what happened 5 minutes ago. We can talk about that at another time, so just like learning how to kind of come back in and zero back in on the focus. It's also great with kids. When kids want to argue, or they're kind of, trying to get out of the situation, to keep coming back to the goal of the conversation in some way. So these are intricate skills. They look great on paper. It's really nice to read like an I statement, like, when you do this, I feel this because of this, and what I need from you is this. They're great. Nonviolent communication is fantastic. And sometimes we need a place to be able to explore some of the intricacies, especially when we're triggered. When we're triggered is when it's the hardest to communicate. Like, it makes sense, right? If I'm triggered, my emotional state is kind of running things. And when my emotional state is running things, it's really difficult for me to bring in my logical brain and try to figure out how to get this message across. So knowing what situations trigger us is really huge to be able to kind of come in with a game plan. You know, it's really romantic to believe that we can just come in and spontaneously talk and just know how to figure it out. It's not that that can't happen, but it takes practice. Hey, Sarah, how are you? So yeah, it takes practice, you know, and one of the things that I see in workshops all the time is that, you know, we come away with a worksheet with some great words and some great tools and a great script, and then we never look at it again. Or we take it and we have a lot of questions like, what about this and what about that, and what if it's my kid, or what if it's my boss, or what if it's my best friend? And we don't actually have a place or an opportunity to actually practice those skills, energetically practicing those skills. Like if I say no and I'm like this, like who's going to take me seriously, right? If I say no and my shoulders are back and I use the volume of my voice and I'm really clear, that's going to get a different message, right? So having a place to practice is important. And the workshops that I'm offering in July in Sebastopol and San Francisco are going to be highly experiential. So it's going to be a combination of being able to, you know, have kind of some templates. Thanks, Sarah. Having some templates, but also some actual opportunities to practice and to feel what it feels like to receive truth-telling in a way that's really grounded and really heartfelt. I think a lot of women kind of have this perception that when they set clear boundaries and they're clear in their communication, that somehow they're being mean. I cannot tell you how many clients will hear me reflect something back to them, and I'll ask them, did that feel mean? And they'll say, no, that didn't feel mean. It felt really clear. Okay, so how about you practice it? Oh, no, I could never do that. Okay, hold on a second. You just said it didn't feel mean. It didn't seem mean. What's getting in your way? Oh, no. I just couldn't do that. So a lot of the exploration ends up becoming, well, what is it that is inside of you that's telling you that you can't communicate in that way? Like, what is that? You know, and often that's, I don't deserve to be heard. What I have to say isn't important. And all of those messages that people may have received in their lives that communicating with others is somehow ineffective simply because what they have to say is not meaningful to others. And so that's a separate piece of the puzzle is, you know, what is it that you're trying to say, and how important is it to you? There's actually a great game in DBT. It's I think it's called the dime game, where how many dimes you have is directly related to how intensely you need to ask for what you want. So if it's, you know, the difference between, you know, I'm going to use an awful example, but like Burger King and McDonald's, you know, maybe the difference isn't hugely important for me, and so that's only worth one dime. But if it's, you know, fast food versus organic, and that's something that's super, super important to me, then it may be 10 dimes worth. Like, no, I'm not going to put that in my body. I can't do that. Like, this is really, really important to me. This is a life value. This is something I can't compromise on. Very different conversation if something has that much value to you versus something that you could really kind of care less about, right? So sometimes knowing how intensely to ask for something helps you determine what skills you need to use. We need different skills in different situations. If I come in like gangbusters and I've got my goal and my plan, and all I'm really doing is telling somebody that I love them, like that doesn't make any sense, you know. Just like if I want to come in and I really need to advocate for myself and I need something that's really important to me, but I don't have a game plan, that doesn't make sense either, right? Unless you've become really, really good at being supremely grounded, really in touch with what you feel, really clear in your communication, using non-judgmental, factual language, and really speaking from a heartfelt place, the better you get at that, the easier it is to actually be your authentic self in any situation, even if you're triggered, because you're aware of that and you're able to kind of very solidly drop in to your feminine presence, because our superpower is our vulnerability and our desire to have relationship, especially healthy relationship. It's so hugely important for the feminine to be in relationship and in connection. And so many of us have been shut down in our attempts to communicate and our attempts to connect with other people. And so the skills of communicating what we want and what we need and how we need it and why it's important to us are really pivotal. The last thing I want to say is that there is this component of the masculine and the feminine. And this isn't related necessarily to gender. This is really related to the energy of the masculine, which is very driven and focused and directed, and the energy of the feminine, which is very fluid, very connecting, very much kind of in the flow and in feeling state. This is important because if you have a partner or someone on the other side of your communication who has a different energy than you do, part of the kind of negotiation within yourself as you think about how you want to communicate is really understanding that and knowing what they need in communication in order to hear what you have to say. I know I've met, myself included, so many people who are like, but they just don't get it. They're just not listening. They just don't hear me. Well, actually, sometimes that might be the way that we are communicating to them, because they are coming from a different energy than we are. And so understanding some of those masculine feminine dynamics, how we receive information, what we need in communication can be super important. And if you're feminine and you have a lot of masculine energy in your life, it's really important to learn how to communicate with that. It's very different than communicating with someone else with feminine energy. So sneak peek, a little bit of information about the workshops. If you have any questions, please ask me. I have two different flyers. This one right here. And basically on this flyer, it's asking if you find yourself avoiding talking about important subjects, if you become reactive when you attempt to be vulnerable and share from your heart, if you steamroll your partner or kids or coworkers in conversation out of fear that you won't be heard unless you do kind of like jump in and kind of give them all everything at once. If you feel like you lose your powerful voice in intimate relationships, like you're fine everywhere else, but as soon as you get intimate with someone that you kind of start losing the power of your voice. If you back down despite feeling strongly about things and you just kind of give in all the time and say, okay, well, I guess, you know, what I need isn't important. Or if you struggle to articulate your needs and your desires clearly to your partner or to your children or to other people in your lives, then this workshop might be super helpful for you. You're going to learn about the why behind your communication is so deeply important. Your intention for the conversation is so deeply important. It may change the skills you use. You know, how to be centered and really hearing the difference between someone who is grounded in their communication and someone who's up here in their story and it's blah, 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 right? You can kind of feel that difference between the two. Learning the difference, again, between the masculine and feminine and how that information is received and what's helpful in communicating with those energies. And the workshop is going to be highly experiential. So we will be up a lot, practicing, playing. Everything that I do is very playful and, you know, engaging. And so my hope is that this will not be a traditional workshop where you're sitting behind a table taking a bunch of notes. I encourage taking notes, but I really feel like the felt experience is super important. So July 20th in Sebastopol at Collective from 10 to 4. And then the 21st is going to be in San Francisco at Thrive Women in Business Center. And that's going to be same time, 10 to 4. Same workshop, depending on where you live, you can come to either one. And there is an Eventbrite link. If you go to my page, you'll be able to see the event itself and be able to get tickets there. Please feel free to pass on this video or pass on information about the Eventbrite. I would love to see as many people there as possible. I really just enjoy the juiciness of talking about communication. It's such an important subject to me as a person who is, really sees myself as a truth teller. And sometimes I have to say truths that maybe don't feel good to the person receiving them. And that is one of the pieces of intention, right? Is that maybe my intention is not to actually make the other person feel better. Maybe my intention is to really speak my truth, but I want to do it in a way that optimizes the ability for the other person to receive that information if possible. Not to guarantee that they will, but so that I can walk away from the conversation with my head held high, knowing that I spoke my truth from my heart, that it was non-judgmental, it was clear and concise and rooted and grounded. That's what I want to be able to leave conversations with. And so I would love to support you in playing with your own communication. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll probably do another one of these before the actual workshop and answer questions. Please feel free to ask questions on here, and in my next Facebook Live, I'll answer those questions directly if you have any. And I look forward to seeing you. Bye.